trick or treat.
See,
and to me that means like, you're not going to get anything out of me. So I mean, I come up with a rule: if a teenager shows up at my door, he gets one candy. If a 4-year-old shows up on my door, that kid's getting a bucket full of candy.
See, I look at it this way. Growing up, we obviously both trick or treated, probably in different ways.
That means less than you. But.
Okay, but the main rule that we were always taught that if a house doesn't have a light on, you don't go. It means they aren't participating or they ran out of candy, right? So I think if any person in a community or whatever don't want to participate or don't want kids knocking on the door, that's what they do. They turn the lights off. That's the signal that, okay, we're not participating, you just move to a different house. When did that stop? When did it become okay for people to turn around and say, well, you're having fun, I don't like it, so let's put a ban on it?
You know what? I think it's not so much about people having fun, and it's more about fear. And I think, the amount of fear that has begun to develop in this world has really led to people doing some stupid things. And I'm not just talking about down in the United States. I'm talking about, this is like a worldwide thing. And we are seeing that, the grip of fear has totally went off and has changed our world. And not for the better. In fact, fear itself has went off and has went off and taken things and made us become completely moronic and done things that will actually do more damage to our society.
Oh, I completely agree. And I look at this, Halloween is one day a year. And it's this point that kids can feel, welcome in a community, that they can get to know their neighbors, and feel safe, because nothing is better than the fact of, these kids being able to walk down the street knowing, okay, their neighbors know who they are. So their neighbors are looking out for them. We've taken that away. On top of that, they are allowed to dress up. They're allowed to be who they want to be rather than being told who they have to be. And what would these elderly or these politicians in this town rather them do? Would they rather them have one night where they're, going out, they're going door to door, getting candy, or would they rather them hold up in a house doing drugs? Because that's pretty much the alternative they're pushing them towards.
Okay, let's face facts here. Okay, if teenagers are going to do drugs, they'll still go trick or treating, and then when they'll go off and they'll go do the drugs regardless. So I mean, I don't think necessarily putting an age restriction or preventing that age restriction on trick or treating is going to go off and is going to change anything.
True.
I do agree though that going off and putting limitations on on our youth to a certain degree. I mean, we all need to have limitations in their life. I mean, there has to be, otherwise it leads to chaos. But I mean, to go off and to tell people, I mean, it's one thing for parents to go off and say, hey, I'm not going to give you candy because you're a teenager and I prefer to give it to the little kids. But it's another thing to go off and say, you're not allowed to. It's against the law to go off and to do this. Because seriously, I mean, no matter how I feel about teenagers, trick-or-treating, I think that's a dumb idea.
And see, the one thing I've noticed here in Winnipeg, which, as you've noted, as you've actually just mentioned, is earlier in the evening is more dominated by the younger kids because they go to bed earlier, they get exhausted sooner. So if you put a curfew, say if they spread it from this small town and they move it elsewhere, if you put that curfew, you now have teenage, kids pushing through the same doors that these little kids are. By having it the way we have, of having no, restrictions on when they can trick or treat, you are actually allowing that age gap so that little kids can have the attention on them when they have it, and then the teenagers have the attention when they are. And there's no there's not mingling, but no unwanted accidents.
This is true. Although the one nice thing I mean, and maybe it's just my neighborhood, despite the reputation that some people might have of it, is I find that if the teenagers are out, these guys tend to go off and keep an eye on the little kids as well. So it's kind of nice, to have the teenagers up because you see them, they're like, "Urgh." But they don't go off and push. All the kids in my neighborhood are very polite. As far as if they go off, they'll wait their turns. It's like when the little kids are gone, and they're pushing at each other.
Absolutely, and if you limit of how long they can actually trick or treat, that's going to happen more often. They're not going to wait for the little kids to get out of the way because those little kids don't have the restrictions. They're not told, okay, you have to be in by a certain time. They have free reign. And to me, that's almost like the whole participation awards for giving awards for doing nothing.
Oh, God. Don't even get me started on the participation awards. The awards were, okay, we're not going to go off. We're not going to award you for being good. We're just going to award you for participating.
Well, and it's even gotten worse from there. And I realize, we're not going with the same route that we've always gone. But who cares? It's about time that somebody says something because this is crazy. In China, I actually just recently read a report that literally says that you are not allowed to say that a kid is smart because it has negative consequences on them.
Okay, China is also a communist nation, so...
True, but other countries have adapted the same thing because they don't want, smart kids and then the not-so-smart kids who need a little bit, extra, nudge to move up, right? It's, oh no, everybody's the same no matter what. So you have the smart kids who are now being dumbed down to fit in with everybody else.
Okay, so... here's the thing. In my opinion, there's no problem with going off and telling a kid they're smart. What the problem is that when you are going off and you're feeding these kids' egos, and that they're craving your praise and stuff. You don't praise kids. You go off and you don't award kids. Well, okay, maybe not praising them because I think children do need some praise, but you don't go off and you're not there to feed their egos. But to go off and to say, well, we shouldn't go off and say this person's smart. Well, you know what? So what? Then you're gonna, if you go off and you go down that route. I went off and I took courses on the different types of intelligence. So next step here is, okay, well, we shouldn't go off and tell that person he's a wonderful musician. We shouldn't tell that person that he's a wonderful painter. We shouldn't go off and point out the things that this person could go off and who does better than everyone else. So, to go off and to say, oh, well, because this kid is better in class, he's smart. We shouldn't be going off and say he's smart. That could lead to us pretty much going off and going down the route and say we should not be going out and pointing out how this person is better at what, the God-given talents he has than the next person. See, and that to me is absolute garbage.
I agree. And how I look at this, if someone scores 100% on a test, what are we supposed to say? Oh, you can do better next time? No, you're smart. You scored 100%. It is not easy to score 100% on a test. If you do that, you're damn well smart, and you should be told that.
The very good says, hey, you did, you must have went off and you must have studied really hard on that. Good job, kid.
And there's, of course, there's the right ways to go about this, but by taking away that, compliment, it's going to have the complete opposite effect as you think. Okay, if you compliment too much, yeah, it's bad. I get it. I completely agree. But if you don't compliment at all, they will stop showing interest in anything that they are currently good at.
Absolutely, and I think that's the key there. And the key is that we need to go off and we need to show these kids that we are interested in what they're interested in. And we need to show them that, hey, and we are there to go off and to be encouraging to them, and that is the key to all of this. And to go off and say, no, you should not be encouraging them to be smart is like horrible parenting, and whoever went off and came up with this needs to get a baseball across the knee. And that may sound a little violent, but that is the absolute goddamn truth.
I do have to say there are some kids who cannot handle the failure, with sports and stuff like that. So,
well, so what?
No. I honestly believe, though, that the participation awards should be parents' choice whether or not, it's okay with them. Because when did we stop going of the parents are the number one? It's now the schools telling the parents how to, parent their kids. It's now the doctors telling, parents how to do things. All these different people are telling the parents what to do, but the parents no longer have the say on what they want to do.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you this. As someone who has a lot of different voices talking in my ear, I go off, take everything they go off and say with a grain of salt, and then I just go off and do what I want with my son. My son has got, there's limitations on him. I refuse to go off and, allow him to be limited. I do not see my son's limitations. And so I refuse to go off and see this. Now, having said this, if my son wants to go off and play a sport and he sucks at it, I am not going to cry. And I will not allow my son to get, if he goes off and they say, give him a pat, it's a good job for, participating. That's great. But, if Joey over there is like, who's absolutely great, is going off and getting a participation award with my son, and, he's not getting, and this is not him being rewarded. This is him going off and earning something.
Absolutely, and that's what's been lost. Is the whole participation is no longer saying, okay, you know what, that's what I want. I want, the first place trophy. I want, something like that. No, it's now, well, I showed up. So, I got a medal. I got a trophy, right? There's no competitive fire. There's no, competition. There's no, I want to practice more. I want to, do better. I want to, be a better teammate.
And I will say this: I have no problem with people going off and saying, "Hey, you participated. That's great." But the fact is that when you're just going off and you're dumbing everything down, when you're no longer doing tournaments because you don't want kids' feelings to be hurt, that is crap. Because when you get into the real world, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, guess what? No one's going to be handing you a participation award. Firstly, well, I showed up. Guess what? You could show up at your job, and if you suck at it, you get fired.
And that's what has gone on is, you look at, even around us here in our city, we do, and there's a bunch of people here who are millennials who don't recognize as the majority of millennials. Millennials are an issue.
Millennials are an absolute issue.
They are extremely coddled, and they're part of that generation that grew up with the whole participation. Nobody can do wrong. You can't fail in school, no matter how bad you do.
They have their safe spaces, their panic rooms. And
when you screw up, you own up to it. And that's what's been lost is people screw up. Well, it's somebody else's fault. Somebody else told me I should do it, so I did. Well, it's their fault for, no. If you choose to do it, it's your fault.
We live in a society where everyone is where a lot of people are either in social media or, they're using their talking, texting. And I actually had a coworker came up to me and she met a guy online and they just wanted to go off and talk, and he insisted that she get a cell phone. And she asked me, why does he want me to get a cell phone? And I went off and I told her it's, because I'd taken some stuff on kids and social media. And the big issue here is that when you go off and you write stuff online, when you write text message, you can actually delete everything. And you can edit it before you go off and you send it out. And so you are going off and you are telling the person what you want them to hear without making any mistakes. Whereas in my generation, we didn't have this stuff. And so, we made mistakes when we talked to people. I still make mistakes. I went off and I said something to my brother-in-law yesterday that I completely didn't even realize was inappropriate. And it's like, guess what? We go off and make mistakes. It's how we go off and we learn. And this seems to be something that this generation, the millennials, are not learning. And I mean, amongst other things, and again, this is not a normal show. Usually we come on here and we have a bunch of fun and we go off and talk about video games or movies or whatever. And today, we're just kind of ranting about society.
Well, frankly, like, when